It was a day before my introduction to music exam. In introduction to music, you were supposed to listen to a whole bunch of different classical songs, weed out the different instruments that were underlying each song, and you're supposed to differentiate which song goes to which composer as well. I sat down to study. It's 4 o'clock, I went over everything over and over and over. 6 o'clock, couldn't make out anything. Studied until maybe about 8 o'clock. Couldn't make out anything still. And then I studied. It was 9 o'clock now, still couldn't make heads or tails of anything. 10 o'clock, I studied. And then finally my buddy came by, very smart guy. He's currently doing dermatology somewhere. He gave me some pointers, some very good pointers, but of course, this kind of exam, you have to be able to figure stuff out. I took his pointers, but didn't really help me. 11 o'clock, couldn't really figure out anything still. Have you ever been in a position where you're studying for an exam and then you can see the future, and it's only a future of failure that awaits you? That's how I felt. What's up, guys? My name is Dr. Safo Asante. I'm the successful IMG, successful because I matched, and I'm here so that you can as well. In this video, I'm going to talk about my second way of studying. In the first video, which is going to be linked up here, I went over how my foundations were set when it comes to studying. And in this video, I'm going to talk about a method of studying which is optimal for last minute studying. Only last minute studying, but not for studying in general. The best way of studying is not by studying last minute. You have to study ahead of time. But if you're in a position where you have to study last minute, this method will help you. So just stick around for this. I grew up in Ghana. I did the first part of my high school in Ghana. And then I came to the US and continued high school here. When I came to the US, high school was such a cinch. It was so easy to me. In math, in history, in biology, whatever it is that I didn't get in the beginning because I wasn't there, I was able to pick up a book and read it. I ended up topping my classes. I ended up being the valedictorian of my high school. And then I was able to get into Yale University. At Yale University, I learned that the material in college is more complex and more voluminous than in high school. For example, take history. History in high school was such a breeze. So I took a history class because I felt that this would be an easy way to get an A. I waited and procrastinated until the last minute. It was 3 days to go before the exam. I decided to pick up the history material. I had to read a book about this thick. Whereas in high school, there is only one account of what happened. In college, the book that I was reading had about 3 or 4 accounts of everything that basically happened. And this is more realistic because history is basically what happened in the past told by people that experienced it. And everybody experiences incidents in a different way from their perspective based on what they interact with and what they remember and what they don't remember. So accounts are usually a little bit different. Now this history book had about 3 to 4 accounts, and that added a level of complexity to studying. So it wasn't as straightforward to study, and I had to study very hard in order to do well in that exam. The other thing that I found out was that the study method that got me to college was not enough to get me to the next stage. I want to say that again. The study method that got me to college was not enough to get me to the next stage. So I had to study different. I had to change my way of studying. Now at that point, I still trusted myself and only myself. Plus, I didn't know that studying was a science and that a lot of other people have figured out the better way to study, the best ways to study. And instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, instead of trying to figure everything out myself, I could have asked other people. I could have watched videos, read books on how to study. But I didn't think about any of that. I still believed in myself. I changed my studying, and the way I studied now was good for last minute studying because I still studied last minute. So I optimized my last minute studying. I would, for instance, let's take organic chemistry for instance. That was a difficult class. I remember, this has nothing to do with studying, but I remember that we were taking an exam one time and the exam just started. About 2 minutes in, everybody in the class just hears slam. Somebody slammed the exam on the table and just stormed out of the exam room because the content was so difficult. I looked at the first question and I couldn't understand why the person wanted to walk out, or the person walked out. But anyway, so studying for organic chemistry, I would, one, isolate myself from everybody because I knew that I didn't have any time to play around because I procrastinated until the very end. So I wouldn't study with anybody because group studying usually end up wasting time talking. Two, I would lock myself up in the library or if I can get a classroom all to myself, I would lock myself up in that room and just the first thing I would do when I get there is I would spend about 30 minutes to an hour just going over the concepts that I needed to know and writing them down, the definitions of the words I needed to know. And once I've gotten all those things down, organized all those things, then I would hit the material and I'll push through the material aggressively. And once I'm done with pushing through the material, then I'll look at the things that I wrote down and see whether I could basically speak out the things that were relevant based on each of those concepts. So by the time I would take the exam, I would have a good idea of all the different specific concepts that I'd written down that I thought were important to know. And at that point in time, I didn't really deal with high yield stuff. I would just try to go through everything that I needed to go through. And that helped. That helped a lot. And that's the way I would approach each class with my last minute study. Because, you would take an exam, you would say, okay, I studied last minute this time. If I studied last minute this time and I got this grade, imagine if I didn't study last minute. For sure, the next exam, I'm not going to study last minute. But I kept studying last minute. I couldn't get over that hump. Nothing was there to really push me because studying last minute and studying with the method that I use was enough to get me decent grades. Now, the thing that did help me using this way of studying and help me survive even though I was studying last minute was that one, I was extremely hardworking. I would work all the way until the very end, until I had some sort of clean understanding of what was going on and I felt that I'll be able to pass the exam and I'll do decent in the exam. Now back to the introduction to music class that I was telling you about. It was 11 o'clock and I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I'm going to fail this exam, right? But I kept studying and I would study. 2 o'clock didn't make any sense still. 3 o'clock didn't make any sense still. 4 o'clock didn't make any sense still. 5 o'clock didn't make any sense still. 6 o'clock, something just clicked. And for some reason, I don't know how to explain it, but at that particular moment, everything was clear. I could tell the different instruments that were underneath each song. I could tell the different composers apart. I could tell who composed which song and so on. And I took the exam and I did well. Now, even though I changed my way of studying to a way of studying which allowed me to cope, and I say cope loosely, with undergrad, it was not the most optimal way of studying, but it was enough to help me deal and survive even though I was studying last minute. In my next video, which I'll release in 4 weeks, I'll talk about my third way of studying that I had to change to in order to survive medical school. Because like I said, sometimes the things that get you to one place are not enough to get you to the next place. I hope you guys found this video helpful, or at least entertaining. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. When you do so, it helps my video get to more people and it shows YouTube that my video is useful. Dr. Safo Asante, out.